So I just read the section up to 496e in Republic, Book 6, so I will carry on from there. But just to review, this section here was a really nice section where Socrates outlines the plight of a philosopher um, who may get attacked by the madness of the multitude, and that now I think he's going to go on into describing the type of environment that the philosopher needs in order to be able to thrive. So from 496e, Adamantos. But that is no small matter to have achieved before taking his leave. And there he's referring to the philosopher is well content if they remain living in some way life here free from injustice and unholy deeds, and depart there being liberated with beautiful hopes favorably and graciously. Because he's not capable, being only one, to oppose the whole savage crew. Socrates, nor indeed the greatest, having not met with a form of government that is suitable to them, for in a suitable ideal form he shall grow to a greater degree. So this is the idea that you have the philosopher but then you need to have the environment. And if you remember last time, I put it in a table where you can have the philosopher and his nature, and then the environment. Which is basically nurture. And then you could have bad nature, bad nurture, and of course the result will be bad. But you could also have a good nature, good environment, and the result will be good. But if you have a bad nature in a good environment, that will also be bad. And if you have a good nature in a bad environment, that will also, well, perhaps not be bad, but it will not fulfill the potential. So this section here is going to look at the environment for the philosopher to thrive and become the best, or be a true philosopher. And here he's put the idea of the form of government that is suitable to them, the word politeas. So I'm just going to look that word up, politeas. So inflection of politeia, okay. So from polites, citizen, plus abstract noun forming suffix. The relation in which a citizen stands to the state, the conditions and rights of a citizen. The life of a citizen, one's daily life, the body of citizens. So it's got the idea of a structure for people, basically. For in a suitable ideal form he shall grow to a greater degree, and shall also preserve the affairs of individuals as well as those of the commonwealth, koina for the community, shall also preserve, soze, the affairs of individuals as well as those in common. F497A. Let me just check my other translation. Under a suitable one, his growth will be fuller, and he'll save the community as well as himself. So there's a difference here between the word soze, one saying save and one saying preserve. So let me see which one of the two it is. Soze. Soze, that's probably likely. Literally, pardon me, literally save us. Where's the etymology though? Sozo. Sozo. Okay, so soz is safe or sound. So we have soze. So this was basically structure for people. And then we have so which comes from soz. Safe or sound. And ezo. What does ezo do? Ezo is a used to form verbs from nouns, adjectives, and other verbs. Right, so where does this safe come from? To be strong, safe and sound, alive and well. So it's like to make safe, maybe, if it's a verb. So then looking back here, he shall grow to a greater degree and shall also make safe the affairs of individuals as well as those of in common. Therefore, on the one hand, it appears to me that we have described in a measured way the reason why philosophy has been ensnared in slander, and that she is accused unjustly, unless, of course, you have something else yet to say. So the reason why in slander, why philosophy in slander, because the good philosophers are useless because of the environment. and then there's a whole load of bad philosophers who are worthless from their own nature. But I have nothing further to say about this. Oh, sorry, just to look at this. This word is weird. Slander here is being diabolen, which sounds a bit like diabolical. So I wanted to look that up. Diabolen. So take that, put it in here. And then see what the word is. Diabole. Oh. So diabalo, to calumniate, calumny, slander, defamation, and then okay, so dia across. So dia is across, and ballo is throw. Throw and hit. So the idea of overthrow, basically. Throw over or across, because this one comes from to the Proto-Indo-European, which is to hit by throwing. I throw, cast, hurl. I wonder if that is the etymology of diabolic. Diabolos. From Icelander, yeah. Through, okay, so the idea of through instead of across could be from dia. Adamantos. But I have nothing further to say about this. But which one of the present forms of government do you say is the one adapted to philosophy? None at all. But this is also the accusation that I bring against them, that at the present time there is no constitution of a city worthy of the philosophic nature. For which reason this nature of the philosopher is also turned and altered, just as a foreign seed sown in an alien soil will either be overwhelmed or overwhelm that which is usually produced in that soil. In the same way, this race, since on the one hand it has not at the present time the power of self, well, I'll see what the other translation does with that, but in any case, it is dunamin, so power, self, but I don't know what that's referring to. In any case, thus it degenerates into an alien mode. But on the other hand, if it should ever grasp the best form of government, aristen politean, just as it is also the best self, then at that time it will manifest that this form is in truth divine, but that the others were merely human, both in their nature and in their pursuits. So if you should get the two together, then this will be divine. Therefore, it is now clear that after this you were going to ask, what is the government for her? So, what's this saying? There's no constitution presently that suits the philosophic nature. Then, this idea of the foreign seed, if you put this seed into, this is the foreign seed, maybe I'll put some yellow, and plant it in a local, it will either, there's two options, perish or overwhelm local. So it's turned and altered. In this way, this race, it says race, but the word is genos or genos, like genus, type. This type of person, since on the one hand it has not at the present time the power of self. In the other translation, it says, this nature is perverted and altered, for just as a foreign seed sown in alien ground is likely to be overcome by the native species and to fade away among them, so the philosophic nature fails to develop its full power. Fails to develop its full power. So the outturn is referring to the power of the philosopher and declines into a different character. This one doesn't have the idea of overwhelmed or overwhelm. So I don't know whether that's there. Therefore, it is now clear that after this you are going to ask, what is the government for the philosophic nature? So government, or I like to call it structure. Structure for philosophic nature, or environment, perhaps would be better. Well, what's the word here? Politaire. So it's structure of people, structure for people, system. For philosophic nature. You are mistaken, for I was not going to ask this, but rather if it was this very one we have described in establishing our city, or another one. So then they've been describing in the Republic this this city-state, which is basically the system, and then working out if this is the system, or at least Adamantus is asking, is this the system for the that is best for the philosophic nature? Socrates, on the one hand, in regards to the others, it is for her self, but on the other hand, this was also mentioned at that time, that something must always reside in the city which will possess the self-logos of the government, the very thing which you, the lawgiver, also possess when you establish the laws. Right, there's a lot of selves in there, so let's just unpack those. So, in the other respects, it is that one, the one that they've been describing, that system. But we said even then that there must always be some people in the city who have a theory of the Constitution, the same one that guided you, the lawgiver, when you made the laws. So, the way I'm understanding this is that you've come up with a system. There it is. And you then set it in motion, and then people will do whatever they do within that system. But then you need somebody here, a real person, who has come up with this system, who sets it in motion. But equally, you need someone within the system. This is who creates the system, and this one here preserves. If I read it like that, does it make sense? So, in the other respects, it is that one. So, before they'd described this system, but had not placed within it this person. So, this is the addition to previously described system. So, in the other respects, it is that one. So, it's exactly the same as what they were describing. But we said even then that there must always be some people in the city who have a theory of the Constitution, the same one that guided you, the lawgiver, when you made the laws. So these both have the theory, possess the theory. Same here. And then it refers back to 412A and B when it says, but we said even then. So what's that section that means even then, 412? Four and two A and B. That the person who achieves the finest blend of music and physical training and impresses it on his soul in the most measured way is the one we'd most correctly call completely harmonious and trained in music, much more so than the one who merely harmonizes the strings of his instrument. Then won't we always need this sort of person as an overseer in our city, if indeed its constitution is to be preserved? Right, we will always need this sort of person as an overseer in our city, if indeed its constitution is to be preserved. So then, 412. 412 says, always need overseer to preserve system. And that's him there already mentioned. So how does it differ from what they were already describing? Maybe they haven't described it enough. Okay, in any case. So, but on the other hand, this was already mentioned at the time that something must always reside in the city which will possess the same logos of the system, the very thing which you, the lawgiver, nomothetes, also possess when you establish the laws. It was mentioned, but it was not made sufficiently clear out of fear of those objections on your part, which have shown that the demonstration of this would be extensive and difficult, and since it is not altogether easy to discuss in detail what remains. So this was not made sufficiently clear, not made sufficiently clear. It would be extensive and difficult, so it is not altogether easy to discuss in detail what remains. What is that? In what way a city shall take philosophy in hand and not be destroyed? For all grand things are dangerous, and as the saying goes, fine things are truly difficult. Pardon me. Nevertheless, the demonstration must be completely grasped by making this clear. So, in what way shall a city take philosophy in hand and not be destroyed? So, this is trying to preserve the system, but it's saying all grand things are dangerous. So, this is unlikely. Why? Because grand things are dangerous, or find things difficult. Nevertheless, the demonstration must be completely grasped by making this clear. It is not unwillingness, I said, but lack of ability which will prevent us. But being present, you can indeed now witness my eagerness. Thus consider how eagerly and daringly I am going to say that a city should lay hold of this practice and pursuit in the opposite way than it does at the present time. I think he's talking about philosophy. How? On the one hand, at the present time, those who take her in hand are mere youngsters just out of their childhood. Besides their domestic affairs and their lucrative money-making enterprises, apply themselves to the most difficult parts of philosophy, and then depart, quote, the most consummate philosophers. But on the other hand, I call the most difficult part the one concerned with the logos, or discourse, account, reasoning. But in later years, if they do consent to listen to others who also practice this after much persuasion, they go as a great favor, thinking they should take part in it as a sideline. But when they approach old age, apart from a few, they are extinguished much more than the Heraclean sun, as they are never rekindled again. So this is present uh, application to philosophy, which is wrong, but it's described. And what is it? Is it 498A? The ones, so you have young people doing, let's call this philosophy, the pink writing. So young people apply themselves to the most difficult part of philosophy and then depart. And then the most difficult part, the one concerned with the logos, he calls the most difficult part the one concerned with the logos. But in later years, if they do consent to listen to others who also practice this, after much persuasion, they grow as a great favor. So here they go as a favor. A sideline. And then when they approach old age, as a stick and a beard, then let me put this on the floor because it's been extinguished. Like the Heraclean sun. What is the Heraclean sun? Heraclean sun. Hmm? Extinguished. Well, it doesn't say. That's not helpful. Oh, okay. So I got a note here from my other translation saying that in Aristotle's Meteorologica reports Heraclitus, not Heracles, so Heraclitus is believing that the sun is new every day. The sun not only sets at night, it ceases to exist by being replaced by a totally new sun the next morning. So, ceases every day. And is not rekindled. Not the same one, anyway. Okay, back to the text. Antos, but how should they act? Exactly the opposite. On the one hand, while they are youngsters, they should apply to instruction fit for the young and philosophy, which also takes very proper care of their body, while it throws out shoots and grows to firmness. Philosophy thus acquires a proper steward. So here, instead, look after body. I think as well. Then, on the other hand, as that age advances in which the soul begins to blossom, they should vigorously apply themselves to those exercises of hers, the philosopher. Then, on the one hand, when strength decays, while on the other hand they are past the age of civil and military service, at that time they should immediately be set free and to be disposed at large, and accept as a sideline, do nothing else but philosophy. So this is the sideline here is philosophy, and the sideline here, when they're old, in the proper system is do how's it put? And accept as a sideline, do nothing else but philosophy. Accept sideline. If they intend to live in spiritually blessed way, and when they die to be acquainted there with the destiny resembling the life they led here. So when they die to be acquainted there, so this is the idea of what you do here in life will be represented, whatever you do here in life will be represented there in death. Adimantos, how truly indeed, O Socrates, you seem to me to speak with heart. Nevertheless, I think that the majority of your listeners will even more eagerly oppose you, and will by no means be persuaded, starting with Thrasymachus. Do not slander Thrasymachus and me, having just now become friends, not that we were enemies before, for we shall in no way desist from our attempts until we either persuade both him and the others, or make some useful advances towards that life when they shall be born again to encounter such discourse or logos as these. I think this is the idea that even if the arguments aren't useful now, they may be useful in a next life. Let me just check 498D. At any rate, do something that may benefit them in a later incarnation. Is what it says in the other one. When reborn, they happen upon these arguments again. Adimantos, you have taken into account but of a short amount of time indeed. I think he's been sarcastic. Socrates, thus on the one hand hardly any at all when you look towards the whole of time. I think that was mentioned before about the ability to look towards the whole of time as being a quality of the philosopher. However, that the multitude are not persuaded by such as has been described is not to be wondered at, for they have never seen existing what has now been described. But much rather some such phrases have been purposely composed to resemble them, but not spontaneously, just as these words now fall together. Okay, so I looked into this before, and I think the point here is that if you see where he says, for they have never seen existing what has now been described, the Greek for existing is genomenon, or genomenon, and what has now been described is legomenon, genomenon, legomenon. So the point is that they rhyme, and it was a rhyme that happened by chance. So they have never seen existing what has now been described. And the point was that they have never seen existing what has now been described is, what was it? This bit here. They've never seen existing a good philosopher or a load of good philosophers in a good environment. And that is something divine. And people have never seen it because it's something that doesn't come about through human endeavor. or at least that's what it says here, that these rhymes happened by chance. And he then looks at that. Some such phrases that have been purposely composed to resemble these, but not spontaneously, just as these words now fall together. So, genomenon and legomenon. So these were spontaneous. And not purposely composed to resemble this. So, not purposely composed to resemble basically this. I'm adding the word divine, it's not in the text, but I think that's the idea. If somebody tried to write this, it wouldn't be the same as if it had just been spontaneous and divinely inspired. But the courageous one, because I think Andra is courageous, who has perfectly, as far as possible, become equally balanced and assimilated to virtue and excellence, both in word and deed, ergo and logo, being able to alternately rule in a city of like quality, they have not ever beheld, not in one nor in many, or do they, or do you think they have? So they haven't seen this happen before. Not in any way, indeed. Neither in turn, O Blessed One, have they indeed sufficiently paid attention to beautiful and liberal, or free, rational discourses, such as those that ardently search for the truth, on the one hand, by every method, for the sake of mentally perceiving it. That one's gnonai. While on the other hand, welcome only at a distance such intricate and contentious debates that tend to nothing else, than to opinion and strife, both in their courts of justice and in their private gatherings. Okay, so this is logos versus arguments. So true logos versus petty arguments. I think this is what this is around. So they haven't indeed nor have they indeed sufficiently paid attention to beautiful, free. So there's beautiful, free, such as though they ardently search for the truth. So they search for the truth. On the one hand, by every method, for the sake of mentally perceiving it, while on the other hand, welcome only at a distance. Such intricate and contentious, contentious debates that tend to nothing, so tend to nothing. Else than to opinion and strife, sorry, not nothing. Opinion and strife. both in their courts of justice and in their private gatherings. So doxan is opinion, and erin must be strife. Doxan, erin. Let me just look up this word erin. Not come across it before. Erin. One of the Erinyes or Erinnies. Angry spirits. Possibly the angry spirits from Orino to raise their excite towards anger. One of the female personifications of vengeance, particularly wrong or immoral deeds on behalf of the victims. Fury. Ancient Greek, Arenas. Okay. Well, Adeimantus. Nor of these, Socrates, on account of these, and foreseeing these things, we were at that time also afraid. However, being compelled by the truth, we did assert that neither city nor government, not even a similar person, would ever become perfect until some necessity of fortune should encompass these few philosophers who are at present called not worthless but useless, whether they wish or not to take charge of the city, and for the city to become obedient, or until the offspring of those who now hold offices of power or kingdoms, or themselves by some divine inspiration become empowered with the true love of true philosophy. Accordingly, then, that it is impossible that either or both of these cases come into existence cannot be reasonably maintained, for thus I say that we may justly be ridiculed as saying things which are especially like wishful thinking, or is it not so? So so you have the idea of necessity of fortune. Necessity of fortune. Ananke ek tukes. Tukes. What's tukes? Tuke. Act of God, act of a human being, regarded as an agent or cause beyond human control, fortune, providence, fate, chance, regarded as the result, good fortune, success. Okay. Equivalent to tunkano, to happen, from Proto-European, don't know how you pronounce that, deug, to produce, to produce. Of productiveness, maybe then. What's tunkana? From the Proto-European root deug, from which also telco, produce. The present stem tuncana is a zero-grade form of the root with nasal blah blah blah. The aorist stem, so on, so on, so on. The future perfect are E-grade, related to teuco, which is from a different present stem and with which it shares some forms, expressing coincidence to happen. To happen. Okay. And then these philosophers who are presently not worth us but are called useless. So these are the good philosophers. They should either take charge of the city, or the offspring of those who currently are in charge become right. So you have the ruler. So either he goes away and you put the philosopher here instead. So this is a philosopher becomes ruler, or B, so he's internally, or B, ruler essentially becomes philosopher or his offspring. And then by some divine inspiration, so necessity of fortune or divine inspiration. According then that it is impossible, cannot be reasonably maintained. So this is not impossible. For thus I say that we may justly be ridiculed as saying things which are especially okay. So maybe it's not impossible. Is probably wishful thinking, but not impossible. Adimantos, it is so. Socrates, if then in the infinite series of past ages necessity has obliged someone that has arrived at the summit of philosophy to take care of a city, or that at the present time may exist in some barbarous region somewhere, being far removed from our observation, or shall exist in time to come, in that case we are ready to contend in our discourse or logos that the government we have described has existed, and does exist, and shall indeed arise, when the Muse herself shall gain control of the city. For it is neither impossible for this to be, nor do we speak of impossibilities, even though we ourselves agree that it is but difficult. So difficult, I think this is the same point, but it's just making the fact that it could have happened in the past, it could be happening right now in the present, unknown to us somewhere. Or will happen in the future. And because time is so expensive, then although it's difficult, it's certainly not impossible. That what is not that somebody at the summit of philosophy is basically in charge. And when the muse of philosophy herself shall gain control of the city, Adimantos, it also appears to me thus, Socrates, but you contend in turn that it does not appear so to the multitude. Adimantus, that is likely. O blessed one, do not thus altogether accuse the multitude, for they shall change their opinion, if without eagerly contending with them, but rather by encouraging them, and by removing the slander thrown upon the love of learning, pointing out to them the persons whom you call philosophers, and distinctly define, just as at the present time, both their nature and their pursuits, in order that they may not be led to believe that you speak of those whom they are thinking about. Or even if they see them in this way, are you still going to deny that they can grasp an alternate opinion about them and answer differently? Or do you think that someone will be difficult to deal with one who is not difficult, or that someone will bear ill will towards one who bears no ill will, by being both free of ill will and gentle? I will anticipate you and say that on the one hand, I am led to believe there are in a very few such a naturally bad temper, but not in the majority. Okay, so this is about speaking to the multitude and persuading them. So this is persuading the multitude. Because earlier in Book 6 he described the beast of mass opinion, and now he's going through persuading them. So do not accuse, do not accuse. They shall change, they can change, they can change. Without, so don't contend or be contentious, but do encourage, pointing out, pointing out by defining, correctly define. Nature and pursuits of the philosopher, in order that they may not be led to believe that you speak of those whom they are thinking about. So you, or even if they see them in this way, you're still going to deny that they can grasp an alternative, they can change, can grasp alternate opinion. And answer differently. Or do you think that someone will be difficult with someone will be difficult to deal with one who is not difficult? So do not be difficult, do not be difficult. Do not bear ill will, by being both free of ill will and gentle. Be gentle, gentle. And this, if you're not difficult or do not bear ill will, then others generally will equally not treat you this way. Because, or that, or do you think that someone will be difficult to deal with one who is not difficult, or that someone will bear ill will toward one who bears no ill will? By being free of ill will and gentle, I will anticipate you and say that on the one hand, I am led to believe there are in a very few such a naturally bad temper, but not in the majority. Majority, not naturally bad tempered. Adamantos. And I am not neglectful to concur. Is it not the case, then, that concur about this same point, that these few people are the cause of the multitude being ill disposed towards philosophy, those outsiders who behave like a band of revellers bursting in where they do not belong? So these are the false philosophers that are giving a bad name to philosophy. Reviling and being fond of making enemies with the multitude. Ah, these are the ones that, right. So, persuading the multitude. These are basically the tenets of a true philosopher. Because if not followed, makes a bad philosopher or bad false philosopher. And this is the cause multitude being ill disposed towards philosophy, cause multitude to be ill disposed towards philosophy. And always make humans the object of their discourses, doing what is least of all becoming, befitting, or proper to philosophy. Make humans the object of their discourses. Make humans the object of their discourses. Well, I certainly do that, so that's something to think about. Make humans the object of their discourses. That's interesting. Adimantos, quite so indeed. For surely, O Adimantos, the one who indeed truly applies their understanding to the real things has no leisure to look down upon human affairs. Oh, that's also good. Right, let me highlight this. So make humans the object of their discourses. So the idea of contemplating true reality versus looking down at human affairs. and to be fighting with them, fighting and filled with ill will and hostility, which is basically goes in with these. Do not accuse, they can change, can grasp an alternate opinion, don't contend, encourage, point out and correctly define, do not be difficult, do not bear ill will, be gentle. Have I got gentle? Yeah. May, do not make humans the object of the discourses. Instead, contemplate true reality. But beholding and contemplating such objects that are orderly and always subsist in the same way. These are orderly, subsist in the same way, such as neither injure nor are injured by one another. Do not injure, are not injured. That's quite cool. But are in every way orderly and according to the Logos. These they imitate and to which as far as possible assimilate themselves to. So, contemplating true reality and imitate and assimilate to. Or do you think that it is possible by any contrivance that a person should not imitate whatever it is, that in communing with that they are filled with admiration? Alright, so they are filled with admiration. In communing. It is impossible. Surely then the philosopher who communes with that which is divine and orderly, as far as this is possible for humans, indeed becomes orderly and divine. But slander is plentiful in everything. It is entirely so. Then will the self be under any necessity not only to form itself, but also to establish whatever they see there among humans? Will this person be under any necessity? Right, in this other translation. And if he should come to be compelled to put what he sees there into people's characters, whether into a single person or into a populace, instead of shaping only his own, do you think that he will be a poor craftsman of moderation, justice, and the whole of popular virtue? So then will this person, this true philosopher, be under any necessity not only to form this within himself, but also to establish whatever they see there among humans, taking care of their disposition both in private and public life? Do you think then that this person would prove to be a bad artisan of sound mindedness and of righteousness and of every other social virtue? Demotices aretes. Indeed, not in the least. But surely, if the multitude perceive that we say the truth about him, will they still be angry at philosophers and distrust us when we say that otherwise the city cannot ever be spiritually sound unless she is drawn by painters who use a divine archetype? Right, spiritually sound is a el dao daimoneseye. Well, I did look this up before at some point. A daimon, where el means good or well or sound, and daimon is the idea here. Dai is to divide or allot. So to give your portion, get your lot. And so if you add this bit on, it becomes someone that does that. So it's the apportioner. And that's where the word demon comes from, demon, daimon. But here it's used in a positive sense, someone who gives you your true portion. I don't know why it comes to spiritually. If I look up demon, I wonder if I'll get to this word. Daimon, dispenser. Divine power, deity, and guardian spirit, and so one's fate, destiny, or fortune. So someone that allots you your portion, your lot, your fate. From diomai, to divide, plus mon, from Proto-European day, to divide or cut. So I don't know where spirit comes from. But in any case, I thought that was quite interesting. So that's eodaimone. So this is sound. Adimantos. They will not be angry if indeed they so perceive. But what method of painting do you mean then? So drawn by painters who use a divine archetype. So here you have, basically you need the system. You have someone who is designing that system, but it needs to have, let's make it more divine. System. This is a divine archetype. What method of painting do you mean then? By taking the city and human dispositions just as if they were a tablet, they would, on the one hand, first make them pure. Okay, so that's interesting. So first thing you do, so you have a system that's filled up. Number one, purify. So you would just have to do all that, get rid of all the rubbish. Make them pure, katharon. So, catharsis. Which is not at all easy, but then in this you know that they will immediately differ from others, for they are neither willing to meddle with an individual nor with a city, nor to draw up laws until they receive them pure, either receive them pure or make them pure. So purify, either receive pure, receive pure, or make pure. And rightly so indeed. Is it not the case then, do you think, that after this they will draw the sketch form figure of the government? So then, to draw. What else? Afterwards, I think, as they proceed in their work, they will frequently look both ways towards both what is naturally just and beautiful and sound and all such like, and in turn towards that which they can implant in human beings by blending and compounding their human form from their pursuits. Right, so there's two ways. One, looking up to model, and down at copy. Two-way. From that stamp which Homer also certainly calls the divine idea and the divine resemblance subsisting among human beings. Call this divine idea. Rightly so. They will then, I think, on the one hand erase one thing, but on the other hand, again draw in another, until they have especially rendered human dispositions as far as possible dear to the gods. This becomes as far as possible dear to the gods. At any rate, it will be the most beautiful picture. Take notice then, are we in any way persuading those people whom you said were coming upon us in battle array? For such a painter of governments is the one whom we recommended at that time to them, and on whose account they were enraged, because we entrusted cities to them. And will they be more gentle with them when they hear what we are now saying? Very much so, if they are indeed of sound mind. For surely, in what way can they now bring them into question? Will they question whether philosophers are lovers of real being and of truth? That would certainly be absurd. Or that their nature, as we have described it, is not allied to that which is best? Nor this. What then? Their nature, being such as this, and meeting with suitable pursuits, shall it not become perfectly good and philosophic, if indeed any other can be so? Or would you say those will be more so whom we set aside and separated? 501D, what does that mean? Or that such a nature, if it follows its own way of life, isn't as completely good and philosophic as any other, or that the people we excluded are more so. Right, so so these are the ones that are more likely to be like that, and the ones that have not been included are less likely to be like that. Not hardly. Will they still then become savage when we say that until the philosophic genus should secure control of the city, neither the sufferings of the city nor that of its citizens shall cease, nor shall this government, which we mythologize in Logos, be taken to be perfection indeed. So, this is repeating what was said previously in the Republic, until philosophers rule, basically, suffering, really. And that's at 501E. Perhaps less. Are you willing then that we say of them that they are not less savage, but that they have become altogether gentle and persuaded, so that if by nothing else they may at least consent by their blushing from shame? So this is another technique here of persuading the multitude, is that they can blush from shame. Um, become gentle and persuaded. This is basically the result. The result. Less savage. Quite so. Let them then, on the one hand, be persuaded on this, but on the other hand, is there anyone who will contend about the following? That there is no chance that the offspring of kings or rulers could be born with the philosophic nature. Oh, uh, is there anyone who will contend that there is no chance? So this is back to this point where the ruler becomes a philosopher or offspring of ruler. And again, this is not impossible. So there is a chance, not no chance. No one would deny that they could happen, basically. Socrates, but although they are born with such a nature, one has to say that they must quite inevitably be corrupted. For on the one hand, that it is difficult to preserve them, even we ourselves agree. But on the other hand, is there anyone at all who will contend that in the infinite series of time of the whole of the human race, there could never be so much as even a single individual preserved or uncorrupted? Yeah, and this is the point here, C502A. Basically, infinite series of time. Someone will turn up that is preserved and uncorrupted. A a philosopher. One philosopher. How could there be anyone that would, or deny or contend against this position? But surely the occurrence of one is sufficient by possessing an obedient city to bring to perfection everything that now seems incredible. One is sufficient. For whenever the ruler has established the laws and practices which we set forth in detail, it is not at all impossible that the citizens would be willing to obey them. Not at all. But then is it strange or impossible that what appears to us also appears to others? As far as I am concerned, I do not think so. And surely that they are indeed best if they are possible. Then we have sufficiently, as I think, explained this in detail in the preceding discourse. Sufficiently so. Now then, since it is reasonable, we agree about our legislation, that on the one hand, the laws and pursuits which we mention are the best, if they were to exist, but that on the other hand they are indeed difficult to come to be, however, not impossible. We so agree. Is it not the case then that since this difficulty has been brought to an end, let us then speak of that which remains after this? In what manner and from what studies and pursuits they shall become preservers of our government. Right, so now it worked out that it's not impossible. So this is not impossible. So given that it's not impossible, what's next? From 502D, going to look at in what manner and from what studies and pursuits they shall become preservers of the system. So, 1. In what manner become, or guardians of best system. And then in what manner, he then says what studies and pursuits. So studies, pursuits. This is 502D. Let me just check. Now that this difficulty, so this is the other translation. Now that this difficulty has been disposed of, we must deal with what remains, namely how the saviors of our constitution will come to be in the city, what subjects and ways of life will cause them to come into being, and at what ages they'll take each of them up. So ways of life and subjects. So another way of saying studies is subjects, and another way of pursuits is ways of life. What's the Greek for these? Studies, mathematon, which sounds like mathematics, but must have a different meaning. Let me look it up, in fact. Mathematon. What is that? Mathematikos, mathematica. Well, see that. So mathema, learning. from manthano, to learn. Manthano, to learn. I guess this is where we get the word mental, mind. Manthano, learn. From the Proto-Indo-European is men. Mendate, thus to put one's mind. Mende, to put one's mind. What's day? To do, to put, to place. So this is do, put, place. And men, to think, mind. To think, mind. And spiritual activity. Spiritual activity. Derived term mathematicos, learning. Oh, it also includes astronomical and astrological in mathematicos, which is interesting. Okay, so that's what subjects and studies. What about pursuits? Pursuits. So studies was mathematon and epitedeumaton. Epitedeumaton. So epitedeumaton. I don't know that I'll find this word. I'll give it a go. Copy. Epitedeuma. Yeah, I'll take that. Pursuit. So from epitedeo, to pursue an activity, to practice a thing, and ma. Well, that's not very useful. If I took epi away, which means something, tereos, two deos. How about this one? Two deos. No. Take epi away. Tade, tude. Well, I'll try tade. On this account. Well, I'm not sure, but in any case, the idea of pursuit or way of life So I looked at that, and I looked at that. Adimantos. We must certainly consider that. So that's the section now looked at from 502 studies and pursuits for this person, given that he can come about at some point. It was in no way wise of me in our previous discussion, having omitted the difficulty that comes to be by the possession of women and the propagation of children, and the establishing of leaders and rulers. So he omitted the difficulty that's to do with the possession of women and the propagation of children, and the establishing of leaders and rulers, knowing that the absolutely true way would come to be with ill will and difficulty. For now we are under no less compulsion to return to discuss the same subjects, and surely on the one hand what relates to women and children has been finished, but on the other hand we must go over again, as if from the beginning, what refers to the rulers. So, establishing of leaders and rulers. I thought that we were going to look about this. Okay, so establishing leaders, rulers. What's that? Archonton. We said then, if you remember, that they must be brought to light to be lovers of cities, lovers of the city or the people, polidas, and be tested both by pleasure and pains, and bring to light that they will neither throw away this doctrine through toils, nor through fears, nor through any other change. So you test this. Test with pleasure, pleasure, pain, toil, fear. Right. Then whoever was not able to do this was to be rejected, but whoever came forth altogether purified, just as gold tested in fire, was to be appointed leader ruler, and is to have honors and prizes given to them both while alive and dead. So whoever passes becomes the ruler, or gets appointed as a ruler. Such were the things which we said while the Logos was passed over and concealed, by having been afraid before to set in motion the present distinction. So he's saying this and is overcoming fear as he talks about overcoming fear. Adimantus, you speak most truly, for I remember. For I shrank, O friend, to say what I must now this, that the most perfect guardians must be made philosophers. Let it be said. Bring So the most perfect guardians being phylacas. So guardians, I don't know if he's distinguishing rulers from guardians, but the guardians must become philosophers, and they are called phylacas. Maybe I should do this. Adamantos. Let it be said, pardon me, Socrates, bring to thine mind then that there will be likely be but a few of them. For the nature, as we described, to which the parts themselves necessarily belong, usually arise together in the same person, but rarely, right? Since the parts of them arise and spread out among the many. So these are rare. So usually, okay, I get it. I can represent this by saying usually you have this person of this type, this person of this type, this person of this type, this person of this type. Okay, so these are the many. But now they are looking for one. This is going to be fun. A bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of this. That's quite cool. I like that. So this is rare. This is usual. Since the parts of them arise spread out among the many, usually, but it's rare for them to come into one. How do you mean this? You know that those that learn with ease and have a good memory and a ready and sharp wit and all such qualities allied to these, but do not at the same time also customarily have a youthful disposition and a magnificence of their understanding, so as to customarily spring forth in an orderly way, with quiet and stable lives, but such people are carried away by their sharpness, wherever it may happen to take them, and all that is stable departs from themselves. Okay, so as an example, let's call these ones the quick-witted. And you have advantages, disadvantages. And so the advantages learn with ease, learn with ease, good memory, ready, sharp wit. Well, that's obvious. And all such qualities, but not at the same time also customarily have a youthful disposition and magnificence of their understanding, so as to customarily spring forth in an orderlier way. So disadvantaged, unordered. not quiet, not stable, carried by sharpness, um, okay, and unstable. You speak the truth, said Adeimantus. Is it not the case then that in turn these same stable dispositions which are not easily moved and aroused to fear in war, okay, so these are the slow-witted, so as an advantage, not easily lodged, dislodged, um, no fear in war, which one might rather complain as being trustworthy, so trustworthy, are not in turn of the same disposition when it comes to learning, for they are not easily moved and not easily so slow to learn, slow to be roused to learning. Just as if they were benighted and are full of sleep, sleep, yawning, when any such necessary labour is set before them. Adeimantus, such is the case. Pardon me. But we indeed said that they must partake of both of these in a beautiful and well-proportioned way, or else neither partake in the most perfect education. So then what you want is a beautiful and well-proportioned blend. Blend. You don't get nicer than this. Oh no, I don't know whether a beautiful blend does this. Okay. They should, but indeed must partake of these, or else neither partake in the most perfect education, nor in the rule or leadership, nor in the honours. So we've got the education, rulership, and honours. Partake. Rightly so, said Adeimantus. Socrates, do you not think then that they will come to be but rarely? How could I not? Surely then they must be tried both in what we mentioned at that time, in labours, in fears, and in pleasures, and furthermore surely in what we passed over at that time. And we now say that we must also exercise them in various kinds of learning, watching them to see if their nature is capable of enduring the greatest learning. So where was the tasks? Test. But also plus need to see if nature is capable of enduring. Nature capable of enduring greatest learning. The greatest learning. What is this greatest learning? So this is the test that was said earlier, which is here. Okay. So as part of this was the greatest learning. Or if it cowers just as those who also cower in the other contests. Adamantos. Surely then, it is proper to consider this question in this way. But what then do you call the greatest learning? Magister mathemata. So that's that maths again. Majestic material, majestic mental material. Socrates. On the one hand, you remember, I presume, that after we had distinguished the three ideas belonging to the soul, three ideas belonging to soul. Let me try and remember. You had the uh, the ruling or mind part, the doing or heart, and the wanting belly. Was it spirit? These aren't right, is how I remember them. Spirit. Well, maybe I need to change this. I think this was called appetitive. So, on the one hand, you remember, I presume, that after we had distinguished the three ideas belonging to the soul, we then set up definitions about justice. Okay, so we had three ideas, then we had four, we had justice, sound mindedness, courage, and wisdom. Dikai, Sophrosune, Andre, Sophias. That which each of them is, Adamantus. If I did not remember, it would be just that I not hear what remains. Do you likewise remember what was said before about them? What was it then? We said somewhere that thus on the one hand it was possible to behold the most beautiful of them, but that otherwise that the cycle, patrol, or journey, periodos, would be long, in which they would clearly come to light to whomsoever took it. However, that it was possible to approach them by following our demonstrations mentioned before, and you said that they were sufficient, and so in this way what was said at that time fell far short of accuracy. So you can get from here to here this way, or you can get here to here this way. This is the short journey, and this is the long journey. And this is more accurate because it is more comprehensive. As it has come to light for me, but if it is sufficient for you, you must say so. But to me at least they were spoken in a measured way, and it so came to light for the others as well. But, O friend, any measure of such beings that also falls short in any degree of being reality proves to be no measure at all. Right, so these short versus long journey as measures. This is inaccurate. Sorry, more inaccurate. This is more accurate. But the measure must be accurate to be a measure. That even works with like a meter stick ruler. If it was inconsistent or not clear, not accurate, then you wouldn't be able to measure anything with it if it gave you different results. For nothing that is imperfect is the measure of anything, even though some people at times readily believe that they are sufficient enough and that there is no need for further inquiry. The masses are quite self-conditioned in this way because they are lazy. Well, he's not being nice to the masses, and earlier we had a whole section about being nice to the masses. But indeed, the guardians of the city and of its laws, least of all have any need of this condition. That is likely. Furthermore, such a nature, O companion, must traverse the wider circuit and must labor no less in learning than in physical exercises, or, as we are indeed now saying, they will never arrive at the perfection of the greatest and most suitable learning. This is the wider circuits. And more labor. You see more along the way. For are not these the greatest? But is there yet something greater than righteousness and those virtues which we discussed in detail? There is something greater, and all of those we must not contemplate only the simple outline just as now, since we must not omit the most exact rendition. Or is it not ridiculous that on the one hand, in other matters of little worth, we put our whole effort to strive to make them the most accurate and purest as possible, but on the other hand, we deem unworthy the greatest precision for the greatest matters? The intent is quite worthy, but nevertheless, do you think that anyone will dismiss thee without asking, what is this greatest learning, and what do you mean concerning it? Not at all, but please thou ask, for at any rate you have not heard about it only a few times, but often. But now either you do not understand, or in turn you intend to cause trouble for me by raising objections. But I suspect this is, pardon me, I suspect this it is more so, since you have indeed often heard that the idea of the good is the greatest study. Alright, okay. The idea of the good is the greatest study. Where are we? 505A. So, how is this in Greek? Idea. Idea to agathon. Agatho. Megiston mathema. Okay. Since you have indeed often heard that the idea of the good is the greatest study, inasmuch as when justice and the other virtues are truly put to use, they become useful and beneficial. Makes other virtues useful, beneficial. And now you know quite well that I intend to speak of this, and to say in relation to this, that we do not sufficiently know it. But if we do not know it, then without this knowledge of it, even if we knew everything else in the highest degree, you know that it would be of no benefit to us, just as it would bring us nothing, even though we possessed anything whatsoever, without the possession of the good. Possession of the good. Or do you think that there is any greater profit in possessing all things without nevertheless having possession of the good? Or to readily know all things without readily knowing of the good? Since one would be readily knowing nothing at all that is beautiful and good. Knows by Zeus, not I at least. So no benefit. Right, so that's that. The only thing I'm concerned with is that here he says the idea of the good, and here he's saying possession of the good. In my other translation at 505b, um, often heard it said that the form of the good is the most important thing to learn. Any more than if we acquire any possession without the good of it? Or do you think that it is any advantage to have every kind of possession without the good of it, or to know everything except the good, thereby knowing nothing fine or good? Well, it's to agathao, and here it's to agathao, while here it is, hang on, let me just get these ones, to agathao, whereas here it is idea to agathao. Well, I'll bear in mind. Adamantos, no, by Zeus, not I at least. But surely you do indeed know this also, that on the one hand, to the many, pleasure seems to be the good, but to the other hand, to the more refined, mindfulness, phronesis, more refined, compsoterois, compsoterois. How could I not? So this is good. One is pleasure, and as good, the others have phronesis, which is mindfulness or wisdom. Actually, Socrates, besides, O friend, that those who are indeed led to believe this cannot point out what mindfulness is, until finally they are compelled to say that it is mindfulness of the good, and most ridiculously so. How is it not so? For we are to blame because we do not know the good. And then again, they talk to us as if we do indeed know the good, for they say that it is mindful of the good, as if in turn we understood what they mean, once they have uttered the name of the good. Most true. What then? Are those who define the good as pleasure any less filled with wondering than the others? Or are they not also compelled to agree that there exist bad pleasures? Quite so indeed. Surely it results for selves, I suspect, sorry, surely it results for them, I suspect, that they are admitting that the same things are both good and bad. Are they not? Surely, what then? Is it not the case then, on the one hand, that it has come to light, phaneron, that there are great and manifold disputes about it? How could it not be? What then, on the other hand, has this not also come to light, phaneron? Gonna look that up, come to light. So let's put this in, phaneron, which has been translated as come to light. And then put it in here, phaneron. And what is it all about? Good, there's a word. Inflection of phaneros, phaneros. From phino and ros, visible, manifest, evident, real, open. Okay, so phino plus ros. Phino. From phino. Proto-European, Indo-European bay or vey, to shine. To shine. I cause to appear, bring to light, show, uncover, reveal, make known, so on and so forth. But it's from they to shine or glow light. And that is BHEH2. BHEH2. What derived terms are there from this? Derived terms from shine. English ones. Emphasis, fantasia, phenomenon. Okay. Emphasis. I guess it's this bit here. And phenomenon. I wonder if there's an etymology of these. Emphasis from en and phino, show. In and show, emphasis, Greek. And phenomenon, ancient Greek, thing appearing to view. Phino, I show. Well, that was quite interesting. Okay, back to the text. So that's how this has come to light. On the one hand, as in the case of the just and beautiful things, the many will choose the apparent, even though they are not truly so. So apparent there is dokonta. Whether in actions or acquisitions of opinions, dokain. But yet, on the other hand, when it comes to the good themselves, the agatha, no one is satisfied to acquire those that are apparent, dokonta, since in the case of these they seek the true ones, ta onta. For in these everyone immediately despises the apparent or doxan. So there's the doxa and onta, so real versus apparent. Real versus apparent. Quite so, said Adeimantus. Socrates, that then on the one hand is what every soul pursues or follows or seeks, and that for the sake of which she does everything, the soul, prophesying or intuiting that it is something, but they are at a loss and are unable to sufficiently grasp or comprehend what in the world it is, nor do they employ the same stable trust about it which they employ about other things, for by this reason they also fail to get any benefit there may potentially reside in other things. Fully then must we say that in regards to such a source and to such an important task, that these people should also be kept in darkness. Kept in darkness. The very best in the city, to whom we shall hand over the management of everything. Oh, so it's asking whether the people who are going to be ruling the city, the philosophers or guardians, whether they should be in darkness about the true nature of the good. Let me find 505e in my other translation. Every soul pursues the good and does its utmost for its sake. It divines that the good is something, but it is perplexed and cannot adequately grasp what it is, or acquire the sort of stable beliefs it has about other things, and so it misses the benefit, if any, that even those other things may give. Will we allow the best people in the city to whom we entrust everything to be so in the dark about something of this kind and of this importance? In the case of just and beautiful things, every soul pursues the good and does its utmost for its sake. Right, so talking about the good. Adeimantus, least of all indeed, would they be in the dark about this? Socrates, I suspect that as long as it remains unknown in what way the just and the beautiful and are good, pardon me, they will not ever be of much value to any guardian to possess, if indeed the guardians themselves remain ignorant of this. But I prophesy that no one will arrive at a sufficient knowledge of these before that of the good. You prophesy beautifully. Is it not the case, then, that our government, Politeia, shall be perfectly adorned if such a guardian is placed over it who possesses knowledge of these? Necessarily. But surely then, O Socrates, what dost thou say the good is? What is the good? Knowledge or pleasure or something else besides these? So what is the good? 506b. So Adeimantus asks at 506b, what is the good? And he says, knowledge or pleasure or something else besides these. Socrates, here's a man for you. It has come to light in a beautiful way, and for some time, that for thou the opinions of others about these would not suffice. Adeimantus, nor does it come to light as just to me, O Socrates, that on the one hand you should be able to relate the doctrines of others, while on the other hand not that of yourself, after having spent so much time inquiring about these. What then? Does it appear just to you that one speak about things of which they do not know as if they know them? So Socrates, you shouldn't speak of the good. Speak as if knows. By no means as if he knew them, but indeed, however, they should be willing to tell us what they are thinking about that which they think. What then? Have you not perceived that all opinions without knowledge are deformed or deficient? Again, opinions, doxas. Maybe I'll look this up. Doxas. Here being translated as opinions. Forgot to do this. Doxas. Genitive singular form of doxa. Doxa. Greek. Well, we want ancient Greek. Where's ancient Greek? Oh, here. Expectation, opinion, judgment, belief. From Proto-Indo-European doxe from dek, whence dokeo, or with some other influence directly from dokeo. What's dokeo? Dokeo. To expect, think, suppose, imagine. According to Beeks, derived from dekomai, I take, accept, from dek, to take. Dek, to take. Even the word take sounds like that. Dek, to take. Docio, I teach, show, rehearse. Ducet, appear, seem. Latin, dignus, fitting, worthy. To expect. So this is doxa. And it basically has things to do with expect, suppose, imagine, seem. Well, I like the fact that it's passive, to take something. It's not something you form of your own mind. To accept, basically. It seems. If I look up dekomai, to accept and receive. Accept, receive. And that was from dekomai. And here it means expectation, opinion, judgment, belief. Belief. And then glory and honor. So, dek. To take or perceive. Terms derived from dek. Any English ones? Decorum, decorus, decorum, Dane. What's Dane mean? to do despite a perceived affront to one's dignity. He didn't even deign to give us a nod of the head. He thought us that far beneath him. To condescend to give, to do something to esteem worthy, to consider worth notice, to consider worth notice. Deem. Alright, well, that was fun. So, what then? Have you not perceived that all opinions without knowledge, and here we have knowledge as epistemes. Okay, so now, new word, epistemes, here being translated as knowledge. So let me take that word. Epi. Genitive singular of episteme, from epistemae. Epistemae. So you're going to have epi. From epi and istemi. Istemi and epi. 1, 2. Okay, it was epi. Epi is on, upon, at or near, from the Proto-Indo-European happy, which means on, at, near, on, at, near. Okay, so that's that side of it. What's this histemi then? To make, to stand, set, to stop, stay, check, raise, rouse, stir up, appoint. Okay, so from histemi, the reduplicated present of stay, to stand up. Proto-Indo, okay, let me do it here. To Proto-Indo-European stay, or something like that. To stand up. Derived terms from stay. Well, histemi, sistati, what's sistati then? A themic, i.e. reduplicated verb of the root stay, to be standing up, to be getting up. To be standing up. To be getting up. So if you put near standing, overstanding, as opposed to understanding, or near to standing up, growth, could it be? Histemi, to stand, set. Cognate with Old English stand and English stand. Stand. Overstand. I think overstand is a good translation. to stand above something in order to view it, and then to understand something in order to respect it. Okay. So, have you not perceived that all opinions without knowledge are deformed or deficient, the best of which are blind? Or in what way do those who opine something truly without intellect appear to thee to differ from those who are blind, journeying on the right road? So you could get something right by chance. Get something right by chance, not through knowledge. Is it like differ from those who are blind, journeying on the right road? Blind on the right road. In no way, said Adeimantus. Socrates, therefore do you wish to contemplate things deformed, blind, and twisted, while having it in our power to hear from others what is bright and beautiful? To which Glaucon then responded, by Zeus, do not fall away, O Socrates, just as if you had come to the end, for it will suffice us, and if, just as you have spoken in detail about righteousness and sound-mindedness and the other virtues, you explain in some way about the good. Well, I think that's probably a good point. So 5060 is where I'm leaving it, and I'll pick it up from there next time.